In a quiet, small town, the shocking death of a teenage girl reveals a web of hidden secrets involving the town's sheriff. As the community reels from the tragedy, an investigation led by the sheriff's own deputy uncovers the dark truth that will change everyone's lives forever. A small, close-knit town where everyone knows each other and the sheriff is a respected figure. The town is calm, with quiet streets, a quaint diner, and the sheriff's modest office. The sheriff's office sits at the edge of town, a modest building with faded brick walls and a worn-out sign that reads, County Sheriff. The parking lot is nearly empty, save for a few police cruisers. Morning light filters through the blinds, casting shadows across the cluttered desks and stacks of paperwork. The atmosphere is calm, routine, business as usual in a small town. On March 3, 2024, inside the sheriff's office, Emma Lewis, a 17-year-old high school senior, sits at a desk near the back of the office. She is here as part of a school internship, her face framed by long, slightly unkempt hair as she concentrates on sorting files and typing notes. She's dressed in a casual, simple outfit, blending in with the unremarkable decor of the office. Her youthful presence contrasts with the rigid, disciplined environment around her. Emma moves carefully, almost nervously as she organizes files. She occasionally glances up toward the sheriff's office door, a hint of tension in her eyes as if waiting for something or someone. Despite the ordinary setting, there is a sense of unease in her demeanor, as if she's trying to avoid drawing too much attention. Sheriff John Baker enters the main area, a man in his late 40s with a purposeful walk and a quiet, commanding presence. He's the kind of figure people respect almost instinctively, his uniform worn comfortably like a second skin. He nods at Emma as he passes, pausing momentarily, perhaps with a bit more interest than the situation requires. There's a fleeting exchange of eye contact, unspoken and intense, before John moves on to his office. Deputy Mark Harris, the sheriff's right hand, appears from the adjoining hallway. In his early 30s, Harris has a crisp, no-nonsense appearance and a quiet but observant nature. He greets Emma with a friendly nod, oblivious to the tension in the air. He takes a seat at his desk, pulling up reports and beginning his day. As the hours pass, the office remains quiet, punctuated only by the sounds of typing and shuffling papers. Emma continues her work, occasionally glancing toward John's closed door. Her expression reflects a strange mix of apprehension and expectation. The atmosphere is still routine on the surface, but there's a subtle tension, a sense of secrets simmering just beneath the surface. Emma has been coming here for over a month now. At first, the friendly and good-natured sheriff was very kind and attentive, showing genuine interest in her aspirations. His warmth made her feel welcome and excited about her role, believing she was part of something important. On April 15th, the late afternoon light is fading, casting a golden glow through the blinds in the sheriff's office. Emma sits at her desk, her attention split between the documents in front of her and the clock on the wall, ticking louder with each passing second. The office is quiet, but there's a tension in the air that seems to press down on her. Suddenly, the silence is broken as the door to Sheriff John's private office opens abruptly. Sheriff John Baker steps out, his face set in a grim expression. His eyes meet Emma's briefly, and there's a flicker of something intense and unreadable in his gaze. He motions for her to join him, his gesture curt and unspoken. Emma stands, swallowing hard as she gathers her notebook and steps toward John's office, acutely aware of the other deputies in the room, their heads bent over paperwork or staring at computer screens. Deputy Mark Harris, seated at a nearby desk, glances up, sensing the tension. His gaze follows Emma as she disappears into John's office, a hint of curiosity and concern crossing his face. Inside the sheriff's office, John closes the door firmly, the click of the lock louder than usual in the confined space. The blinds are drawn, casting thin stripes of light across the desk and floor, lending the room a shadowy atmosphere. Emma stands near the door, clutching her notebook tightly, her expression guarded. John approaches her slowly, his face hard, almost angry. He lowers his voice to a tense whisper, close enough that Emma steps back instinctively. He chastises her for some minor error she made in her report that morning, but his tone is far too intense for the triviality of the mistake. His words are clipped, layered with an undercurrent of something more personal, more charged. Emma nods stiffly, offering a quiet apology, but John's expression doesn't soften. He steps closer, his posture intimidating, and Emma feels trapped, her back nearly against the wall. She looks down, her fingers tightening around the edge of her notebook, the uncomfortable closeness and the power imbalance between them painfully clear. Suddenly, there's a loud knock at the door. Emma jumps, the sound breaking the tense silence, and she looks up to see Deputy Harris standing just outside the door, his silhouette visible through the frosted glass. John's face freezes, his hard expression slipping into one of forced calm. He steps back from Emma, adjusting his demeanor in an instant. John opens the door, a mask of professional detachment on his face, and greets Harris with a nod. Harris's eyes shift between them, noticing the strain in Emma's expression and the slight tension in John's stance. He hands John a stack of files, mentioning a case update. Emma takes the opportunity to step away, squeezing past them and slipping back to her desk, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Mark watches her go, his expression unreadable as he turns back to John, sensing that something isn't quite right. John brushes off Mark's concern with a brusque response, returning to the files in his hand. Emma resumes her work, but her hands tremble slightly as she types. The unsettling encounter with John lingers in her mind, casting a dark shadow over the rest of her afternoon. She catches Harris watching her from his desk, his brows knit in a slight frown, as though he's beginning to piece together that something more might be happening under the surface. The night air is thick and heavy as Emma approaches the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town on the night of April 20th. It looms ahead, a shadowy silhouette against the moonlit sky, its broken windows and rusted metal giving it an eerie, desolate presence. The ground is littered with debris, and the faint sound of a distant train whistle echoes through the stillness. Emma hesitates at the entrance, her heart racing as she takes a moment to gather her courage. She checks her phone once more. John's message directed her here, and she knows she has no choice but to enter. The foreboding atmosphere heightens her anxiety, but curiosity pulls her forward. Inside, the warehouse is dark, the only light coming from the moon filtering through cracks in the walls. Shadows dance along the concrete floor, and the air smells musty and stale. Emma's footsteps echo as she moves cautiously, every sound amplified in the silence. She calls out softly, her voice trembling slightly, but the sound is swallowed by the darkness. As she ventures deeper, she catches a glimpse of movement from the corner of her eye. Her pulse quickens, and she turns abruptly to face the direction of the sound. The silhouette of a figure appears in the shadows, and Emma's breath hitches in her throat. It's John, emerging from the darkness, his expression unreadable. "Emma," he says, his voice low and serious. He steps closer, the tension palpable as she stands rooted in place. There's an urgency in his demeanor that sends a shiver down her spine. "I need to talk to you." Emma nods slowly, her instinctual fear battling her curiosity. John gestures for her to follow him deeper into the warehouse, where the shadows are thicker and the air feels charged. She hesitates for a moment, but the pull of his authority compels her to move forward. As they reach a more secluded area, John stops, turning to face her. His expression shifts, and for a brief moment, a flicker of vulnerability crosses his face. "You need to be careful," he warns, glancing around as if ensuring they're alone. "There are people watching." Emma's eyes widen, a mix of confusion and fear swirling within her. The gravity of his words sinks in, and she feels an overwhelming sense of dread. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberates through the warehouse, shaking the walls and sending Emma jumping back instinctively. Her heart races as John's expression darkens, his protective instincts kicking in. He moves closer, shielding her with his body as they both turn toward the source of the noise. Another crash echoes, followed by muffled voices. John's jaw clenches and he takes a step forward, preparing to investigate. Emma feels a surge of panic, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. As John disappears into the darkness, Emma is left standing in the dim light, torn between fear and the urge to follow him. The noises grow louder, and she knows she should run, but something keeps her rooted in place. The weight of the situation bears down on her, a realization dawning that she's in over her head. The next morning, the sheriff's office buzzes with the morning activities of law enforcement. Officers move briskly, their conversations creating a low hum of energy, but a noticeable absence casts a shadow over the usual routine. Emma is not present. Deputy Harris glances repeatedly at the clock, concern etching lines across his forehead. Emma's desk sits untouched, her absence unsettling. The office feels less vibrant without her, and a nagging worry settles in his stomach. Sheriff John, seated behind his desk, appears focused on the day's tasks, but there's a hint of tension in his posture. He casts a glance toward Emma's empty chair, an unspoken worry flitting across his expression before he quickly masks it. The deputy approaches John, casting a furtive look at Emma's workstation. John acknowledges him, assuring him that Emma texted during the night, requesting time off due to feeling unwell. He brushes off Harris's concerns, insisting that everyone needs space now and then. Harris, however, remains uneasy. He returns to his desk but can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The usual sounds of typing and phones ringing feel muted, and the camaraderie among the officers lacks its usual warmth without Emma's spirited presence. As the hours slip by, the unease within the sheriff's office grows. Deputy Harris tries to immerse himself in his tasks, but his thoughts keep drifting back to Emma's absence. A sense of urgency builds within him. He can't ignore the signs. Something deeper is at play. At lunchtime, the atmosphere in the office remains tense. Harris's worry festers as he glances toward Emma's empty desk once more. Determination sparks within him. He knows he can't let this go. Emma needs someone to look out for her, and if John won't take action, he will. As dusk settles over the small town, the last rays of sunlight fade behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets. Deputy Harris, troubled by Emma's absence, feels an urgency driving him forward. The office had buzzed with concern throughout the day, but with each passing hour, his anxiety deepened. He knows he cannot wait any longer. He must check on her. He climbs into his patrol car, the engine purring to life as he navigates the familiar roads leading to Emma's apartment. The quiet hum of the vehicle contrasts sharply with the growing tension in his chest. The evening air is cool, carrying a hint of unease that clings to him as he drives. Pulling up outside her building, he notices the dim lights flickering in the windows, shadows dancing behind the curtains. As he steps out of the vehicle, the crunch of gravel underfoot sounds louder than usual, amplifying the stillness around him. Approaching the entrance, Harris's heart races. He knocks on the door, the sound echoing in the silence. There's no response. He knocks again, a sense of dread washing over him. He tries the door handle, but it's locked tight. An unsettling feeling creeps into his mind. He moves to the window, peering inside, but the room is dark, revealing nothing but shadows. He calls out her name softly, but the only reply is the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. His instincts kick in, and he decides to check the surrounding area. As he walks around the building, his eyes scan for any sign of her. He peers into the small courtyard behind the apartment complex, hoping to find her there, but the space is empty, save for a few scattered leaves. Worry gnaws at him, and he decides to reach for his phone. He dials Emma's number, listening to the ringing in his ear, each tone heightening his anxiety. Finally, it goes to voicemail. "Hey, it's Emma. Leave a message." The cheerful, familiar voice feels like a cruel contrast to the heavy uncertainty weighing on him. Harris takes a deep breath, assessing his options. He paces back toward the front of the building, the darkness enveloping him, and considers his next steps. He knows he needs to inform Sheriff John, but a part of him hesitates. John's dismissive attitude earlier echoes in his mind, yet he cannot ignore the possibility that Emma is in trouble. With determination, he resolves to call for backup. He quickly dials dispatch, reporting Emma's absence and requesting assistance to search for her. As he waits, he scans the surroundings, a sense of urgency compelling him to act. In the back of his mind, a troubling thought surfaces. What if the sheriff's protective facade hides a darker truth? He feels the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He cannot let fear paralyze him. He must find Emma, no matter the cost. April 24th, the early morning sun filters through the trees, casting a soft glow on the forest floor. A heavy silence envelops the clearing, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. The air is thick with tension as a search party scours the area, their hearts heavy with dread and hope. Deputy Harris stands at the edge of the clearing, his heart pounding in his chest. It has been 3 long days since Emma's disappearance, and each passing hour has deepened the worry among her friends and colleagues. As search teams comb through the woods, the landscape feels increasingly ominous, shadows creeping closer as the sun rises higher. Suddenly, a call pierces the air, shattering the fragile calm. "Over here!" A fellow officer's voice rings out, laced with urgency. Harris's heart sinks as he rushes toward the sound, fear propelling him forward. As he reaches the scene, the officers have formed a perimeter, their expressions grim. The sight before him chills him to the bone. Emma's lifeless body lies on the forest floor, surrounded by a halo of fallen leaves. She appears untouched by time, but the stillness of her form betrays the horrific reality. Harris feels the weight of despair crash over him. He kneels beside her, a wave of nausea washing over him. Emma's once vibrant spirit is now extinguished, and the world feels unbearably heavy. The lead investigator bends over the body, noting the circumstances. They carefully document the scene, and Harris steps back, fighting back tears. A sense of helplessness grips him. He wishes he could turn back time to protect her from this fate. Later, at the morgue, the atmosphere is stark and sterile. Harris watches as the coroner prepares to perform the autopsy. The room is cold, both in temperature and in the starkness of reality. The coroner works methodically, his expression impassive as he begins the examination. Days pass, and the results finally come in. The coroner's voice echoes in Harris's mind as he delivers the news. Emma was pregnant. The revelation lands like a blow, compounding the tragedy of her death. Harris grapples with the implications. The news raises haunting questions. Who was responsible for her condition? What had happened in those dark days leading up to her disappearance? The answers feel crucial, yet so far away. The realization of Emma's pregnancy alters everything. Deputy Harris reflects on his conversations with her, the light in her eyes and her passion for her work. She had dreams, plans for the future, and now they are lost. The grief intertwines with anger, fueling a determination to uncover the truth behind her tragic end. As he prepares to return to the sheriff's office, a steely resolve forms within him. He cannot allow her death to be in vain. With each step he takes, he vows to find justice for Emma, to ensure that the darkness that claimed her life does not go unchallenged. The sheriff's office buzzes with a tense atmosphere, papers cluttering the desks as the fluorescent lights flicker overhead. Deputy Harris sits at his desk, surrounded by files and evidence gathered during the investigation into Emma's death. Days of relentless digging have led him down a dark path, with each discovery weighing heavily on him. A corkboard on the wall displays photos, timelines, and notes, creating a tangled web of information surrounding Emma's life. As he examines the connections, one name keeps surfacing, a married man seen frequently near the locations where Emma was last spotted. As he prepares to return to the sheriff's office, a steely resolve forms within him. He cannot allow her death to be in vain. With each step he takes, he vows to find justice for Emma, to ensure that the darkness that claimed her life does not go unchallenged. The sheriff's office buzzes with a tense atmosphere, papers cluttering the desks as the fluorescent lights flicker overhead. Deputy Harris sits at his desk, surrounded by files and evidence gathered during the investigation into Emma's death. Days of relentless digging have led him down a dark path, with each discovery weighing heavily on him. A corkboard on the wall displays photos, timelines, and notes, creating a tangled web of information surrounding Emma's life. As he examines the connections, one name keeps surfacing, a married man seen frequently near the locations where Emma was last spotted. After hours of investigation, Harris uncovers a series of messages on Emma's phone, text threads revealing clandestine meetings with someone referred to as Jay. The realization hits him hard. Jay is Sheriff John. The man who should have protected her is revealed as her lover, and the betrayal twists in his gut. He recalls the sheriff's earlier dismissiveness regarding Emma's absence, the way he brushed aside concerns. The protective facade now shatters before Harris's eyes. Anger surges through him as he prepares to confront the sheriff. Harris sets up a meeting with John in the dimly lit conference room. The air feels thick with tension as he lays out the evidence methodically, each detail illuminating the dark corners of their relationship. John's confident demeanor falters as he begins to comprehend the weight of the accusation. His expression shifts from confusion to disbelief, then settles into a defensive posture. Harris watches as the sheriff pales, the reality of the situation sinking in. The truth casts a shadow over the room, exposing the darker implications of John's actions. Silence hangs in the air, thick with unspoken truths. The sheriff's demeanor shifts, a flicker of anger flashing in his eyes. He knows he is backed into a corner, but Harris stands firm, the fire of determination igniting within him. As he leaves the room, the gravity of the situation settles heavily on his shoulders. The battle for justice has begun, and Deputy Harris is resolved to see it through, no matter the cost. The tension in the sheriff's office is palpable as Deputy Harris prepares for the next step in his investigation. He knows that he cannot let the truth remain buried. He gathers evidence, cross-referencing Emma's messages and movements with Sheriff John's whereabouts. The clock ticks ominously, each second amplifying the urgency to act. After hours of compiling everything, Harris heads to the station's briefing room. He calls in the team of deputies, aware that they will need to stand united against the looming threat of corruption. As they file in, he can see the concern on their faces. They have sensed the shift in the air, the undercurrents of tension that have enveloped the office. Harris lays out the findings on a large table, photographs of Emma, snippets of text messages, and notes that connect the sheriff to her. He explains Emma's secret meetings with John, detailing how her pregnancy and subsequent death are intertwined with the sheriff's actions. The room falls silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The deputies exchange glances, uncertainty shadowing their faces. Some appear shocked, others skeptical. Harris knows he must win their trust. He emphasizes that justice for Emma must be their priority, and together they must confront the sheriff. The sun sets, casting a red hue over the town as Deputy Harris gathers his team in the sheriff's office. The atmosphere is thick with apprehension, each deputy sensing the weight of the investigation they are about to confront. The tension is palpable as they prepare to face Sheriff John, the man they once trusted. Harris lays out the evidence on a large table, photographs of Emma, snippets of text messages, and notes that connect the sheriff to her. He meticulously outlines Emma's secret meetings with John, emphasizing the connection between her pregnancy, her tragic death, and the sheriff's actions. The room grows heavy with silence as deputies take in the gravity of the situation. The sheriff enters, a facade of calm masking the growing tension. He glances at the table, his expression shifting from confusion to defensive anger. Harris stands resolute, determined to ensure justice for Emma. As the sheriff attempts to downplay the evidence, Harris maintains focus, pointing out the timeline and connections that reveal John's betrayal. The air thickens with unspoken truths, and the stakes become clear. The other deputies step forward, aligning themselves with Harris. The united front against their superior amplifies the tension, a palpable confrontation of authority and justice. The sheriff realizes he is backed into a corner, the control he once wielded slipping away. Harris stands firm, knowing the importance of their mission. The gravity of the moment settles in as they prepare to take action against the man who has caused so much pain. The courthouse looms large against the blue sky, a symbol of justice and the weight of truth. Inside, the air is heavy with anticipation as spectators gather to witness the trial's conclusion. Deputy Harris sits among his colleagues, a mix of hope and anxiety coursing through him. The sheriff enters, his demeanor a stark contrast to the man who once commanded respect in their community. He walks in alongside a well-dressed lawyer whose confident stride indicates a strategy prepared to counter the mounting evidence against him. The courtroom buzzes as the proceedings unfold, revealing the details of Emma's tragic story. Harris watches closely, noting how the sheriff's lawyer expertly navigates the narrative, deflecting blame onto Emma. The defense claims that she intentionally seduced the sheriff, painting a picture of manipulation and deceit that leaves the audience in disbelief. As the prosecution presents its case, Harris feels a knot tighten in his stomach. He knows the truth, and yet he watches as the defense spins a web of lies, undermining Emma's character. The judge listens intently, and the jury absorbs every word, their expressions revealing little of their thoughts. When the jury finally returns with a verdict, the tension is unbearable. The courtroom holds its breath as the verdict is read. The sheriff receives a minimal sentence due to his long service and the circumstances surrounding the case. The weight of the injustice hangs heavy in the air, a bitter pill for those who loved Emma. Deputy Harris stands at the back of the courtroom, a mix of anger and disappointment coursing through him. He knows the truth about the sheriff's actions and the pain inflicted upon Emma. As the courtroom empties, Harris feels a renewed sense of responsibility. Emma's story will not be forgotten. The fight for justice extends beyond the courtroom, into the hearts of those left behind. He vows to honor her memory and ensure that no one else suffers the same fate. The sun sets outside, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. The community may not have received the justice they sought, but Harris is determined to keep Emma's spirit alive, fighting for a world where such tragedies can no longer occur.